to Connect to Success with me, Ashley Owens, your host on RVN TV, 12:30 and 1 o'clock on Thursdays during your lunch break, where we interview the power networkers of the greater Philadelphia and South Jersey area. And I get to interview John Tooher today. I'm very excited that you're here today, John. Thank you for being here.
I'm excited too, Ashley.
So I posted something on LinkedIn today. I forgot to mention this when we were in the green room about that fact that you were coming on the show. I've never gotten more response from a guest coming on in a long time. So
I'm sure it's all you.
You're cool. No, it's your cool factor is pretty damn high up. So thank you again for being here. So John and I have met through a mutual acquaintance of ours, which is Sarah Rosenberg from Power Match.
Yes.
That's how we met, like a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's, what, 3 years, something like that?
It could be, yeah, at least.
Gosh. But then you and I met again, hanging out, and you telling me how to run my business so that way I don't die slowly and to scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still dying, John. I think I need that commission back.
It looks like you're doing some great things, so
Thank you.
keep doing it.
Well, do me a favor. So I am a big fan of HeadRoom. HeadRoom is a shared office space, but I actually really don't know the origin story of that. So please do me a favor and tell people, you know, what HeadRoom is and what your position is and what your involvement is in it.
Right. Well, right now I'm the sole owner, I'm president, I guess, of HeadRoom. But when we started, it was a partnership between myself and two other individuals, Dan and Erin Levens. And we started back in 2014.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'd come out of the corporate world. I'd spent my entire career in the corporate world, found myself here.
Dying slowly.
Well, I just found myself sort of thinking, what am I going to do next? I'd left the corporate world. And I met Dan through a company, a small startup that both of us were actually helping. And we realized that we got on and had sort of common ideas about what we wanted to do. And so he'd already come up with the name HeadRoom. I have to give him credit for that. It's a great name. But we joined forces, and we've been growing HeadRoom ever since. We have started with one location in Media, then added another in Wayne. And yeah, today it's myself and my operations manager, Renee, who run the space side of the business.
Wow.
And it's a virtual office environment. People come in, use the office space, leave, someone else comes in and uses the same office. And
so what's the difference between HeadRoom and like a WeWork and all of those other, you know, massive conglomerates? Yeah,
I mean, we're obviously somewhat on the smaller side with two locations. We have about 90 businesses, though, that use both locations on a regular basis. But I think what separates us from many others is we're about three things. Space, we're about collaboration. So we encourage people to talk and work with each other, and a lot of that goes on at HeadRoom. And then the final thing is strategy. And that's what I do on a daily basis now, because in general, Renee takes care of the office and making sure everybody's behaving themselves.
Or not, depending on the day.
I realize that a lot of small businesses need help figuring out where they're going. And that is a third sort of pillar of HeadRoom. So I work with companies, they may not be at HeadRoom, helping them kind of come up with a roadmap, and then often they need subject matter expertise to execute on that strategy. And that's where I can dip into the HeadRoom sort of gene pool of experts and pull out a CPA or a lawyer or a you know, IT specialist, whatever they need to help them kind of get to their vision of where they're going.
So when you're working with these clients, you said that you were working with different companies that you can kind of pull from the HeadRoom space.
Yeah.
So what can somebody expect from working with you, and what kind of companies do you typically work with? What's in your sweet spot?
I sort of characterize them into three types. There's the sort of startup world where, and their problem really is they're like a child in a toy shop. They've got all these possible avenues they can go down, and they're not sure which one to take. And it's not good not to know where you're going, you know, in any kind of activity in life. So they sort of need a certain type of help pulling a plan together, picking from many alternatives, and then getting going, because it's much better to get going than keep thinking about it, right? Second type is a company that's sort of already established but stuck. They're not really going anywhere. The team's good, but they've sort of lost that growth and almost lost the will to live in a way. It's not that bad, but they're sort of turning up every day, and there's no sense of forward motion. there may be some goals around growth sales, or growing sales, or improving margins, or reducing costs, but the kind of adventure's gone, you know, and they need help reinventing themselves. So, and again, it's about realizing all the assets they have, and then deciding where they want to take what they've got, and then thirdly, it's a company that may be undergoing some kind of stress. So perhaps they've got a new competitor, or there's a technology shift and a threat, some kind of technological threat that's sort of, and they're looking and saying, how do we survive in this new world? Again, often they'd be surprised how well they can do if they plan in advance.
Almost sneezed in order to do your interview. Sorry, go
right.
ahead. Continue.
Again, no, just making the point that having a plan, you know, is half the battle.
Right,
And
right.
a lot of companies that come under threat panic, and they start cutting costs, and they start trying to drive the sales guys harder, instead of saying, wait a minute, let's stand back and think, we already own this market, we already know our customers, we already have experience here. How do we leverage that to compete? And let's not, you know, let's set the rules the way we want them to be. Let's not be driven by this competition. Often the competition is some, you know, IT firm or some newfangled platform.
That looks all shiny.
It looks all shiny, but now the reality is it doesn't work, or the people running that business, you know, don't know how to get to market, or there's some weakness. And these guys are in a much stronger position than they think. But what they tend to do is panic and make bad decisions. And
do you typically find people that come to you, is it more of a proactive approach or reactive approach?
Oh, it's mostly reactive, yeah. And that's part of the problem, because they often are at a point where it's a lot harder to move on and come up with it's not impossible, it's never too late, but the later you leave it, the harder the slog, you know. So, but again, it's human nature.
Yeah.
And I mostly deal with companies that have sort of felt, wow, we've got to do something. It's, you know, crisis time.
Who's not a good company for you? I know every company can be great, especially if they're going through one of those three tiers of challenges. And the reason why I'm saying a company that's not good for you, it could just be not a right fit for how you manage those expectations.
Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, everyone's a good fit.
Yeah.
The company where it'll be, it's when the leader, if it's the CEO or the owner or the president or whatever, it's when they've made their mind up that they want to bring about change. And hopefully they realize it's better to bring in a facilitator that can help them, or, you know, sort of navigate the process of doing a complete analysis of where the business is, and then looking at where they want to go, and then figuring out, well, what are all the 1,000 things that we could be doing today are the things we actually have to do if we want to get to where we want to get to.
Right.
So, you know, it starts with the CEO. It has to, because
if the leadership isn't there, they're not gonna.
And if they're not interested in having another adventure or taking the company to the next level, then I can't help them, you know. They need to want to go on a journey.
They need to be open to it.
Yes.
If they called you, they need to be in it. They need to make the changes that they need to do.
Yes, they've got to feel that there's another episode, you know, to be had.
Not just giving up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you are working with those companies, can you give me an example of where, and you don't have to use your company names, but like a case study of where they were to where you took them?
Well, there's so many, but one example, it can often be that companies are stuck in a modus operandi. It's the way they do business, and they don't see that there's a lot more fruit on the tree, on the same trees that they're picking, you know, from at the moment. So often it's just a case of asking them, well, why don't you look for more work from the customer base you have today?
Right, right.
And I've done that with one company, and their sales have tripled in about 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was really just by going back to their current customer base and asking about other problems they could solve. They already had the trust of those customers.
Right.
And so they could get in the door, but they weren't asking the right questions.
Interesting.
And so that's been a good one. That's a sort of a sales growth thing, I guess. What I like to see most of all is that sense of energy coming back, you know, where they are excited about their company and their business. And that energy then just results in success in multiple ways. And you know, it really depends on what the original problem was, right?
Right.
As to, you know, the level of success in terms of, you know, getting from wherever we were, like from point A to point B. And my sort of little mantra is that tactics will get you from A to B, but strategy will get you there in a straight line.
Right.
And tactics, you know, it's a windy road if you're on a tactics only approach to doing business.
And so what can companies expect when working with you?
Well, the basic approach I take is I'm not one of these people who wants to go in and talk to all the employees and, you know, do numerous interviews and then go back and then, you know, report back, because I feel that's just allowing everybody to come to the strategy session with an agenda. So I much prefer to work with CEOs who are happy to bring in their team. I mean, they can tell them, we're going to talk strategy for the next 2 days, because it's typically a 2-day sort of engagement for me. But I would rather they come in, we're going to talk about the business. You should be able to talk about your business. If you're not able to talk about your business, you've got to ask why you're on the team, right? So one assumes that the direct reports to CEO can talk knowledgeably about the business. And we're going to have a very in-depth conversation, a very methodical but in-depth review of the business. We're going to talk IT, we're going to talk marketing, we're going to talk sales, we're going to talk relationship with the customer, metrics, you name it. And after a day of doing that, we kind of, you know, have more or less covered everything. We haven't made any decisions, we haven't tried to solve any problems. We're just saying, this is where it's at. Interesting. So that's day one. Day two,
then first hour.
No, that's certainly an 8-hour exercise typically. Day two is about deciding where we're going to go. Like, where would we like to be? What's it going to look like, smell like, say, maybe 24 months from now? And we just define that, kind of, that's our destination, right? So once we have that in mind, we go back over our 8 hours of material and we pull out the big stuff. Like, this is big. We need to, you know, revamp our CRM, or we need to, you know, hire a new product manager or something. Whatever those things are, they're big. We don't know how big they are. They're just big. We then take those and we rate them in terms of how impactful is doing something about that on our ability to get to our vision, and how likely is it that we're going to have to do it. So you're looking for highly impactful things and highly likely things. And we call those things drivers, key drivers. And from the sort of 600 points you might have made in the situation analysis, we'll end up with, let's say, 100 key drivers. And when we rate them, very simple process really, we'll probably end up with 20 that are actually highly impactful and highly likely. And those become, we group those into affinity groups, and then those things become ultimately the sub-objectives of 4 to 5 key strategic objectives.
Wow.
And we're kind of done. And the point is, and what I always try to make sure is that it's not my ideas. I'm here to facilitate you as a company going through this process and coming up with your own plan, right? And the fascinating thing is, very few people know how to do this, because you don't get exposed to strategic planning techniques until you get right to the top of a larger organization. And most smaller companies don't even do it. So not a lot of people know how to do it.
Well, hopefully, since we have you here, you can teach everybody how to do it. Well, so when we return, we're going to talk to John about his tactical tips and practical takeaways in networking so he can show us how to do it. We'll be right back.
or just want to eat like one, visit Rostelli Market Fresh, your home for the freshest locally sourced ingredients to please everyone who loves great food. Our organic meats, quality seafood, and free-range poultry are cut fresh to order. Chefs create culinary-inspired prep foods made fresh every day, which pair nicely with our vast selection of fine wines and spirits. Choose from handmade pastas, artisan cheeses, organic produce, and grocery items, all from the finest purveyors. Rostelli Market Fresh, from our family to yours.
RVN TV is a platform for people of any industry to share their story. Over 285,000 viewers are tuning in to RVN TV shows monthly. We guarantee a great experience that you'll be sharing with everyone you know while increasing your personal and company's brand awareness. But what is your brand? According to Forbes, it's a combination of your logo, your product, your design and feel, and your personality. Did you know that aside from being a guest, we offer even more opportunity to boost your brand? Adding your company logo and website on screen during your interview will allow viewers to recognize your brand instantly. Incorporating images and video clips is another great way to showcase your product during your live segment. Let viewers see how good you really are. And most importantly, there's you and your interview. For less than the cost of an...
Yes, we're here. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Connect to Success with me, Ashley Owens, on RVN TV, 12:30 on Thursdays. During your lunch break, I'm on my 14th cup of coffee, but sorry, John. I apologize.
That's all right.
Yeah, so my energy can come on to you. But before we had the break, we were talking about, the benefits of working with you and the companies that you typically work with around building up a strategy, right? Going the tactics around, building up the tactics is not necessarily the best path, but people need strategy to get from point A to point B. Some of the companies that you work with, I'm curious because you work on these three different facets, the three different kinds of companies. What's the biggest problem or the most common problem that some of these companies have?
Well, first of all, it's not knowing where they're going. And I kind of always tell this: if you're on a journey, it's something to be excited. What's at the end of the journey, right? And coming into work every day just to do what you did last Friday, it's great, but it's not really satisfying. Right. And I think that companies need to know that they are going somewhere, and then they need to tell the story about why they're going there, because that's what people engage with. That's why people want to join companies. They want to go because they hear that this company's going places. Yeah. So in order to have a story, you need to have a strategy, right? Because the strategy is what gets you to where you're going, and the story is about why you're going there. Well, right? Speaking of stories, networking in itself is like telling a story of you. Is telling an example of who you are, what you do, but also really who you are and who you want, what direction you want to go into. Whether it's through an introduction, whether it's through a referral, whatever it may be. So tell me with somebody like you, because you have such an insight at everybody's company, meaning like you have such a sixth sense, right, Sean? Sixth sense, something like that. Am I right? Sixth sense? All right. Sixth sense on being able to understand, usually, or being able to pick out a problem that they're having. How do you not consistently coach somebody when you're at networking events? Because I feel like if you have such an insight, you can see, just based off of their 30-second introduction, what help they need. I do, and unfortunately I can't help myself. I mean, the other thing is, and the sort of the quick, sort of indicator to me is when people don't know what their lifetime value of their customer is, right? Yeah. It's sort of saying to me, one, you're not measuring things. You don't have metrics. Metrics aren't important to your business. And the problem is, if you're not measuring anything, you don't know where you are. Right. So or if you can improve. Yeah, exactly. So, if you're not measuring things, and that's another big issue, right? So it's not knowing where you're going and not measuring where you're at, right? And it sounds very obvious, but I promise you, most companies are not very good at measuring where they're at. If you don't know where you're at, you don't know whether you need to improve or not, right? So yeah, I meet people and I often feel that they are very busy, but not having any direction. And again, it goes back to metrics, and it goes back to not really taking the time to sort of stand back and figure out where you want to go.
So when you're networking in that space, what events or what organizations are you typically going to that you find can kind of cater to that angle?
Right. By the way, that's another thing a lot of large business or medium to small business owners don't do. They don't network.
Yeah.
And so...
Or they send their people who may not be as qualified to explain the company. Yeah.
So...
I've met the 22-year-olds with an expense account. They're great.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But I think,
So
again,
great.
it's very important for business owners to get out and talk to people,
Yeah.
and not just other CEOs,
Right.
because there's no point in talking to another CEO. You need to talk to IT people and marketing people and finance people and learn something, right? You don't want to hear everything you know about
great.
finance from your own finance guy.
Right. You want to go out and learn.
Learn
Okay.
what other people are doing. But yeah, networking for me, and I do a lot of it. I've been in many groups and tried them, and sometimes it's great for a while and then you need to move on. But consistently, the one that I like the most is Power Match,
Yeah,
which we're both
members.
members, and I just had a Power Match this morning.
Oh yeah, who did you meet with? Do you remember?
I met with a lady who is a leadership development specialist. She helps companies develop their management team.
That's great.
And I met with another lady who is a sales representative for a product called Thrive, which is essentially a small business ERP, if you know what that means.
Yeah.
And looks like it's got a lot of promise. It does many things for small businesses.
Right, and so for people who don't know what Power Match is, it is an organization that matches up like-minded individuals to cross-promote and to collaborate.
Yeah.
There's no selling in the group. You meet with 2 other people every 2 weeks. You can do virtual conferencing as well, and from what I understand, they went international. So they've got a couple clients in Mexico and Canada, and they're growing exponentially throughout the country. So their main headquarters is in Pennsylvania, but they've got people all over the country. But it's pretty exciting. It's nice to get. I was talking to Mauricio and Alonso from. Has she hooked you up with those guys yet? These copywriters?
No, not yet. No.
Oh my goodness, we love them very much. But it's interesting to your point. It's like you're consistently learning. You're consistently learning about somebody's new experience, about their new position, about their job, about their company. But to your point, like CEOs, they don't want to talk to other CEOs, or they shouldn't want to. They should want to expand their horizons in that way.
They're not going to learn a lot from another CEO.
Yeah.
But I think, if I was back in the corporate world now, again, having been there and not networked, if I was back in there, I would force my management team to join a networking organization and prove to me that they're out talking to people. Because otherwise you just get more and more in your own world and you're not connected anymore.
I worked at eBay Enterprise when I was there as I worked in the project management office, and everyone was in their own space, right? They were in their own space. They really didn't talk to each other, and if they did, it was because they were forced to, based off of being paired together.
Yes.
Networking was not a thing. It was a thing that they did, and you could feel it. You could feel the management style kind of crushing the souls of each of the employees. You could feel the lack of community, the lack of collaboration, and if there was collaboration, it was forced. So it's just a testament to, that culture needs to be changed.
And where are you going to get ideas from? Where are you going to hear about the latest app that does this, or the latest, technique or methodology?
If you're not allowed to be on LinkedIn to look at that stuff, then how the hell are you supposed to expand your horizons?
I have really enjoyed the transition from corporate to the small business world. It's been amazing.
Oh goodness. Yeah. So if you could give a couple of tips around what to do, like top 3 things to do and top 3 things to avoid, what would they be?
From a strategic perspective?
From a networking perspective.
3 things to do is network regularly.
Okay.
Make it part of your business.
Consistency. Okay.
Yeah. 2 is decide, be somewhat selective. I mean, there's a degree of never knowing who you're going to quite meet, but do some homework. Often you can figure out who's there and you can decide, I would like to meet that person and this
being
person.
Intentional about it. Yep.
And 3rd, listen. I sometimes forget to listen, and it's very important. Listen to the person. You're going to gain more from listening to them than you telling them something. So
amazing.
Those are 3 things to do.
And then
3 things not to do.
Yeah, just don't. Yeah.
I guess don't talk too much.
Don't go to every single event.
Yeah.
Like go to be intentional about it.
Absolutely. And you know, there's etiquette around networking and how you do it. And you know, I'm not going to tell people how to do that.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's and just be impressed by the gift of networking, because it is a wonderful thing to have the opportunity to talk to lots of people you've never met before in a friendly environment. So
Amazing.
yeah.
John, we're done now. I'm
Good.
so sorry. Can you do me a favor? Can you look into that camera and tell
Yes.
people how they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on our website, which is headroom.net, and also on headroomstrategy.com as well.
What's your email?
It's John T, so that's JOHNT, at headroom.net.
Very nice. Thank you, John, for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure that you stay tuned every week for your tactical tips and practical takeaways around the power networkers in the greater Philadelphia and South Jersey area. Stay tuned next week. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, email me at ashley@ashleysys.com. Be happy to have you as a guest, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much for watching.